Cough, coughany, cough, cough. Here, the internet's busiest music nerd. And it's time for a review of the new Portico album. Living Fields. Portico is a UK-based musical group fresh off of a name change from Portico Quintet, and obviously a lineup change as well, since they are no longer a quintet, at least with this new album. And they've been building up a reputation for themselves since the late 2000s with a very modern and progressive approach to jazz music, incorporating elements of minimalism as well as electronic music into the style. Most notably on albums such as 2009's Isla, as well as their last self-titled album, which was one of my favorite albums of that year. But as Portico has progressed artistically, their sound has seemed less and less based in the jazz tradition. And now with this new album over here, it doesn't seem like they're making jazz music at all. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, yeah, Cal's dead. He would have been surprised by that if he were still alive. Maybe said something like, "I can't believe it's not jazz." Rather than any of the kind of steady, calculated funk and grooves that we got on Portico Quintet's last album, with this new LP over here, we're getting just a lot of simple, skeletal, stiff, very clean and atmospheric electronic production. On top of which, Portico kind of invites a handful of singers to deliver some voice. People like singer, songwriter, and producer Jonah McCleary, as well as Joe Newman of Alt J, and another singer, songwriter, and producer, Jamie Woon. And the presence of these singers is very prominent on this album. There's only one short interlude track on the entire record here that doesn't feature at least one of these three singers. So on this new LP over here, Portico is essentially acting as the producer as well as the songwriter or co-songwriters as they bring on these different vocalists. And if you couldn't tell already from the singers that they're bringing on this album, they're going in kind of an art pop and alternative R&B direction, because that is the background these producers and singers come from, which isn't necessarily bad. These aren't bad styles of music, but I guess it's kind of Portico's approach to these styles of music that leaves a lot of these songs feeling less like really great tracks and more kind of like just moody, trendy filler. Now, there are a few highlights on the record here, like with the song 101 featuring Joe Newman, with a temperature of 103. I love the tune. I love the vocal melody that rings through on this track. Newman takes a very somber tone with his voice and the lyrics. He doesn't quite bring the wild inflections that he does on a lot of Alt J songs, but still the very sad emotions of this track ring through, and he just shows himself to be a passionate and a very capable singer. The simple beat of this track is okay. The very glassy and smooth arpeggios on this track as well are nice, but the ending kind of fizzles out. This track and the next song on here as well, which feels like a bit of an interlude song, it shows that there are some good ideas on this album here, but not many of them are organized or defined in such a way where they feel really complete and solid or fully formed. All of these okay and sometimes good ideas kind of meld together very blandly in a way that they tend to just kind of cancel each other out and make the highlights of this album just feel a little less significant. And there are other tracks in the track listing here I'm just having a hard time pulling anything significant out of, like Atacama, which takes definitely a weirder approach to sound and texture on this track. There are just some strange effects that pop up in the rhythm on this song. And, even though it might be a little quirky to a degree, the track musically still kind of feels like just wallpaper. And the song Color Fading. While I'm getting kind of a soul vibe from the vocals on this track, the instrumental, the beat, it just feels so stiff and so calculated that it pulls any potential for emotional connection out of this song. And it's not like its approach to coldness and soul music is such a strong juxtaposition that it's novel or that it's exciting or, whoa, this is totally different. It just kind of feels like a weaker, watered down version of all of this trendy, reverb-laden alternative R&B that's just popping up left and right now. And the song Memory of Newness, which is the closing track on here that features Jamie Woon, who is actually one of my favorite singers on this whole project. But his singing ability and his talents, I don't really think pour through on this track. This song seems way more infatuated with its inability to develop past anything else other than like an ambient intro to something, versus like a legitimately interesting song. It comes out of its shell for just a spare few seconds, but then immediately after, it just begins to wander into the nothingness this album has presented for the past 30 minutes. I really did not like this album, and so far it's been one of my biggest musical disappointments of the year, and for several different reasons. One, this is not the kind of record I look for from anyone, much less Portico. Two, this LP is so short, it's just 37 minutes. It feels like they wanted to come together with this new sound, try something totally different, but not really commit to it all that hard. Three, not only is this album kind of just unsatisfying to me in its length, as well as its surprising change of pace, but I also feel like I'm just kind of tossing this album on top of the pile of albums in already very established trendy style that I just already don't care for. And on top of all of it, in the midst of this sound change and this very short album, Portico couldn't even spare more than like one or two decent songs. We get one track after another on this album, and yet there's no incredible song at the core of much of any of it. Not that that was the case for Portico's previous material. It wasn't really, not at least in a sort of verse, chorus, verse kind of sense. They were playing with jazz music and minimalism, and in that realm, you can rely a little bit more on things like repetition and groove and so on and so forth. But here, they've kind of gravitated into a much more song-based style of music, and the songs are maybe one of the weaker elements in the equation over here with this album, and it really hurts its enjoyability, with just so many melodies here being so incredibly not memorable. Not really digging this album at all. Not even really a little. There's like maybe one track I liked off of this entire LP, and I didn't even like it that much. I don't think Portico is untalented or anything like that. I don't think this album is necessarily a fall from grace, depending on what they end up doing with future projects. But this album, to me, it really just kind of felt like an unflattering change of pace, a very unflattering change of pace. I'm feeling a strong 2 to a light 3 on this thing.
Transition. So have you given this album a listen? If so, what did you think of it? Love it? Hate it? Why? And what do you think Anthony should review next? I'm You Wrong, You're Right from YouTube, YWR on Twitter, and just an average looking guy IRL. Forever.